Welcome back to episode 20 of Wyandot Lake, our Planet Coaster 2 water park. Today's video is going to be formatted a little differently from the past in that we are going to be completing, foliage and all, a pool complex. So I do think this will flow better than how we have previously done our videos with all the hopping around and having to come back through multiple videos. And videos from here on out will more than likely, for the most part, follow this new format. So let me know down below what you think. But this is how things should be going, which I think will be a lot better. So I mentioned a few videos back that I wanted to start making each pool an attraction within itself. And this is the first real attempt at that since I made those comments. It's not that I haven't wanted to do that yet, and I just ignored that. It is just that this is where I was in the actual build process when I recorded that video and kind of made that decision. So what this is going to be is a small-ish wave pool. I say ish because it's, I think, medium size within the context of the game, but relative to everything is kind of small. So it's going to have plenty of seating. I actually think we put in one chair for every person capacity-wise that this pool can hold, which is something that I've wanted to kind of try to hold true to as much as possible throughout the series. And it's also going to be very, very contained within the space it is in. You can already see right behind the rock work here, we are going to have a pump house, which is something I want every pool to have a dedicated pump house. So that'll be behind, and then we're putting this in because we've got a waterfall we're going to put in, and we're going to need to access that, and we'll put in some pumps and stuff, which will just really kind of add to the realism, and it's definitely something I want to kind of have a ton moving forward. Speaking of having a ton, there is a ton of foliage and decoration going into this area, if you can't tell by the rocks already. So that's going to look super great. Can't wait to get to that about 2/3 of the way through the video. I will say I have some concerns, right? Every great design has things that aren't great. And I am a little worried that it is too close to the midway and you're not really going to be able to hide it. I think it'll be fine. I've got a couple tricks up my sleeve. The first one is we are going to do kind of a forest green look with the building itself. So that'll kind of really hide it. And then we're going to put in some heavy foliage and everything as well. We actually do a little bit of that and the service path there entering the maintenance bay, and it actually doesn't look too bad. So I don't think it'll look horrible. Need be, we can always throw down a gift shop or some other just decorative building on the other side on the path there to kind of hide an ugly concrete building on the back side. So kind of going into what we're working on right now, I don't know why, but I felt like I have really put this emphasis on having kind of realistic looking buildings and realistic back areas, and I just feel like I've been lacking in that area. And so what we end up doing is we are going to put in this pump house is, I guess, the best thing you can call it. And the reason being is we need a filter to filter through the water, but also, as you can see, we're laying some tubing down. Now you may be saying, hey, why are we laying tubing down? Well, we're laying tubing down because we're going to have a waterfall on that rock. So maybe start thinking about that. What is a waterfall with rock? What's that called? Maybe thinking about that. We might get there later in the episode. But we're going to add this. And it's one of those things where guests won't really see it. You know, maybe they'll see it from the top of the slide complex or elsewhere in the park or something. But it just is going to add a little bit of realism, and I want to go back eventually and kind of do this with all of our things and really just kind of make it. We also did the blue for the color because it's cold water. We're going to be pumping cold water through here instead of warm water, and so pipes obviously are labeled based on cold and hot. So that's why we do that. But yeah, so I'm super excited for it. Something I'm also super excited for that I'm really curious about. And before I get there, I will say, don't judge the waterfall if it doesn't look great. I think is it Tagged that does just incredible stuff. I saw he has a new trick for waterfalls out. I've not seen how to do it yet, but I know my waterfalls fail in comparison, and at some point maybe we'll go back and make that change. But something I am really curious about as we kind of keep moving through this park is the day I am recording this is the day before I start school. I've talked about I've just finished moving halfway across the country, and that's because I start architecture school tomorrow. And so I'm really curious to see as we go through and we talk about kind of the different things that go into a build and the different things you need to include, how that influences the designs that we are putting into the game. So I would say probably around episode 25 or so is when we'll really start to maybe see some of those influences making their way into the game, just because that gives me probably a month or so of classes in knowledge. I don't think, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anything that tomorrow on the very first day I'm going to learn and I'm going to come home and be like, this is altering to how we do everything. But you never know. But back to this area. So I talked about really kind of hiding this area and really kind of making it feel within itself. And that is what we're seeing here. So we have the really high rock on that side. The reason being is that space that's kind of in the center that's nothing right now is going to be our water slide. And I don't really want you to see the water slide from here, right? I want every area to kind of be its own reserved area, right? Think about, I almost would say like Survivor in terms of like, you know, they've got these kind of little areas that you can't necessarily see from everywhere. And that's kind of the feel that we're going with here as well. So that's kind of why we have the high rock. And then we'll do something different on the other side, which will look really good as well. And then we lower the rock as we get closer to the pathway over there. But on this far side, we are going to put a little, I don't want to say plaza area, but seating area, plaza area. And this is where a lot of our seats are going to be. And we're really going to get the feel for having a small space feel big. Because what I mean by that is like that's a very small gap in between the chairs and the foliage. But we're going to really kind of go through and do as much as we can to really hide all of that and make it feel like you're a lot further away from the different places than you are. And that is something I'm really excited for. I will say, I talked, I think, 3 or 4 episodes ago about fencing and not knowing, you know, you don't want to put too much fencing because it kind of makes stuff feel smaller, but you also don't want people kind of jumping all over. This is an area that I think fencing isn't super important because you want that open feel. But back where we were, and we'll get back over there in a second, I think fencing is also going to be really important. So we are going to also place in our service roads here. We're going to take a second away from what we were doing to place in our service roads and also laying in our utilities. And you're going to notice we are laying down a ton of utilities. Why is that? Well, the reason we are doing that is because I have said before, I want every pool to have its own pump. I want every item, regardless of if it needs it or not, to be within range of power. And we got away from that. We did not do a good job of that at all. And so we're going to take a little bit of time here to go back through and make sure everything has the proper things. And quite frankly, with how, I don't want to say broken the game is, but how easy the management side of the game seems to be from everything I've seen so far, I'm okay with spending a little extra money because I think it adds a little bit of that realism. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. Why? Because we can. So that's the purpose of all this. That's why we do all this. We'll probably go back through and do the same thing to the areas we've touched on already in that kind of final cleanup episode before we open the park. But that'll be super exciting as well. So before we move back to kind of working on what we were before, I have been kind of messing around a little bit in the last few days, and I have figured out how we're going to kind of run this park. I've played Planet Coaster 1, and my park was losing a lot of money, like $13,000 a month, which in Planet Coaster 1 is a ton of money. And so I ended up creating a spreadsheet to kind of track everything. And as I did that, I was like, I really like the way that this sits, the way this works. So I've actually planned and I'm going to go in and kind of do the same thing with this area and with this park. And so we'll have that for once we run the park. And we'll go over all that as well when we do our kind of final cleanup video. We might even do kind of a intro video as to how we're going to run the park. But going back over to the main part of today, and that is this wave pool. You can see where we added those trees, and it just did a really good job, I think, of hiding that. And so I don't think you necessarily see it as much as I was worried you were going to. But we always might make some changes. And we're going to kind of take this little seating area over here, and we're going to kind of really enclose it, really kind of hide it. It's not separate. You know, you've got kind of the gaps. We've kind of framed some windows almost, kind of looking into the pool there. So you still feel connected, but it's going to be a little quieter. It's definitely going to be a lot more shaded. Definitely this is not an area, and really I would say this entire Tiki area as a whole, that you're going to hang out if you want to tan. And I think it's important people want to come to these places to tan, but then some people also want a place to just relax when they're not swimming. And especially on a hot day, you know, maybe you don't want to tan. Maybe you want to be kind of in the shade a little more. And I think this area does a great job at promoting that. And our tanners can kind of enjoy the wave pool over at the boardwalk or kind of the different seating options we have over there as well. Which, now that I'm saying that, I'm actually thinking that area above the boardwalk that I've been struggling might be a really good place to put something like that. So I actually went ahead and jotted that down. I put it under park enhancement ideas and not under capital projects because I don't think it would be expensive enough. But I think kind of a tanning bed kind of thing, or not tanning bed, but a tanning deck would be a really cool thing to maybe put there. And that's kind of our tanning area, and over here is kind of more of our relax point over here. So you can also see where we put in our entrance to our pump house, and this is one of those things that I spent a lot of time thinking, like, how are we going to do this? I don't think it could look any better. I mean, you look at that fence that we put in there, and you have zero clue for what's back there, and even how far away it is back there. But looks great. This area here is one area where I think fencing may be necessary. You know, I've talked about that. You know, some areas it's necessary. I try to avoid it. But I do think right here would be a place, just with how tight, especially on this side with the main path, everything is. You just don't want people walking through and trampling. And we are also going to add in a couple of little touch points. I don't think we put one there. I think we look at putting something there, but I don't know that we end up actually putting something there. I think maybe we change. I know we do a couple of touch points, but yeah, it's over here. So we do leave those there, I think. But over here, we're going to put in another touch point. And I think there's definitely more of these touch points in this area than there is anywhere else in the park. And it's right here on this rock. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in these little boxes, and I don't think we put anything else. We just kind of put in these like little boxes. We put in a little sign. My thought is to kind of make this like a little photo spot, right? So I want to put something on that sign that kind of is, hey, welcome. And this is one of those things where as I think I get into school with architecture, it's going to really make a difference just because not great with graphic design right now, but I'm going to have to get really good at it. And so we can maybe make a graphic that we can put up there. But like you have a little bench in front. It's just like a little graphic place, you know, maybe some music or something. But super excited to have that. So going back to this area, I said earlier that, hey, we've got a waterfall over sharp rocks. Maybe think about that. Hint, hint. Well, that's because the name for this attraction, this kind of pool, which, of course, we want them to be attractions to themselves, and it is going to be Cascade Cove. Cascade, the definition, is a small waterfall over a steep rocky cliff. And cove, of course, is an area that is kind of hidden away. And obviously, this is kind of hidden away via the rocks and the foliage, with the exception of kind of the little low spots here by the entrance. And we've got that just beautiful looking waterfall at the end there. And so just felt like the perfect name to put in here. And I will also say, I think the sign, it's a little bit of a ranch look, but with kind of the tilt and everything, I think it just looks absolutely perfect. I do feel like I am starting to get a lot better at signage. I think part of it is I'm understanding more what I want my signage to look like and getting all that in. And so super, super thrilled with that. Also, if you hear like the occasional like bump like that, I apologize. I have a monitor at kind of 30 degrees that I've got the video playing on, and my notes kind of directly in front of me. And so I just swivel, and sometimes I bump into that. So I apologize if you do ever hear that. I will try not to do that anymore. But we are going to put in the lighting in here. And one of the things I love about the lighting is we kind of put the poles within those Viking sticks, so you can't really see them. And then we're going to light up the rock work around it as well. I will say with the rock work, we went with kind of a basic white light right now. Looking back on it, I'm not super sure how I feel about it. And you just saw kind of a look there, so let me know what you kind of think. But this just feels like it's a really good place to go in and add a color palette that the lights can cycle through. Tiki just doesn't feel like bright lights to me. It seems like it's a little more dimmer, a little more colorful. And so that kind of harsh white just doesn't really work. So I'm thinking about going in and changing it out with a sequencer, making kind of an orange and red, add in some maybe blues and greens, and just kind of have it fade through and cycle through that at some point. But that's kind of one of those things that as we kind of go through and enhance the park, I think we can go through and do. But here's our waterfall. We do bury all these in here. It ends up, I don't know. I was just really feeling it when I built this pool, and everything about it, I think, just came out so well. And it looks incredible, I think, especially with the lighting and just kind of the back of house stuff. And I do think, and you're going to see this in episode 21 next week as well, we work on the hot tubs. I think I'm really starting to hit my groove with the game and with the design, and I'm excited to see it. So this is the last thing we're going to kind of do here is put in this light, which will kind of light up kind of the seating area. And even this, like, it's very different than the other lights, but because of how it's placed, like, it really doesn't feel that different. So super excited about that. Speaking of next week's episode, it is going to be another episode very similar to this one, but heading back over to the front of this area and working on our hot tubs. I know we did some work on that area already, but after seeing how good this area turned out and starting to place down some foliage, I saw an opportunity to make some changes and could not resist. Should be a lot of fun, though, as it really does end up coming much closer to what I had envisioned it being than it would have had we stuck with kind of the original look and the original track there. So if you're still watching at this point, thank you. Would love it if you dropped a comment down below as to kind of what you think about this and this area so far. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and see you next week.